What are Sneaky Yelan's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. To get started, we should start off by discussing the main reason that you would even get Yelan in 2025, that being the Double Hydro team. Her Double Hydro core is extremely strong. It's able to fit into a multitude of scenarios, not to mention, it has multiple different drivers which are able to take the helm and keep the team flowing nicely. So, it can be accessed by many different types of people, it doesn't really matter who you have on your account, anybody can drive this team. And the reason why I consider this to be relevant is because Lady Farina is one of the most owned characters in all of Genshin Impact, so this is a team that many of you are going to be able to form. Alternatively, you can always form Double Hydro of Xingqiu and Yelan. That was what the team core was like before Lady Farina ever came out, and it's also pretty decent. It's definitely not going to be as strong as the Farina variant, however, the Xingqiu variant works just fine as well, and is perfectly serviceable. It's really good if you need a ton of Hydro application, or if you just want those two to do the majority of a team's damage. This team does better the more well invested your Lady Farina and Yelan is, especially because Yelan's personal damage can be quite high with the right amount of investment. Essentially, the only requirement that this team core has, if you're playing Lady Farina, is a healer on the end. Otherwise, you can basically go ham and stick this into so many different scenarios. It is extremely generalist, and usually I don't like to promote generalism too much, because I prefer a few effective teams. But the thing with Double Hydro is that it's genuinely strong wherever you slot it, and it's really strong for most Pyro characters as well. It's also fantastic for regular Electro Charge teams. Whatever your use case is, you're going to be able to see use out of Double Hydro. It is tried and true. It has lasted for an extremely long time now. The team core has been strong since its initial conception, and it's not going to suddenly get weaker anytime soon. Another nice pro about Yelan is that she's able to provide Hydro application. Now, she doesn't provide very consistent Hydro application, but if you're playing her in Double Hydro, then it's going to be more than enough. Not to mention that for most situations in which you would want Hydro application, Yelan does actually provide enough. So, she ends up being a really good choice for this. Hydro is the best element in the game, without a shadow of a doubt. It provides you access to the strongest reactions, so naturally, being able to provide access to that element is gonna naturally make you quite the strong unit. So, that's another reason why you might want to consider pulling for her. And also, I should mention that she can be a very strong alternative to Lady Farina. If your dearest Hydro Archon needs to be elsewhere, then you can easily use Yelan as a Hydro application substitute. Now, with that being said, she's not going to be able to replace absolutely everything that she does. However, she's still going to get the main job of Hydro application done. I'd say that if you're using your Lady Farina in order to proc 4-piece hunters on a DPS, for example, well, obviously Yelan's not going to be able to do anything about that. However, if all you're looking for is a strong Hydro applicator that's able to do damage, well, then Yelan's going to fit the bill just fine. She's definitely not going to be as strong as our dearest Hydro Archon, no doubt about that, but she's still going to be a more than viable option. And shoot, you're not even completely missing out on damage bonus percent buffing, because Yelan is still able to provide some ramping damage bonus percent buffs through her A4. So, it's not all bad. She can definitely act as a good alternative if you need Hydro specifically. I should also mention that she has very high personal damage if you're willing to build her up well. If you give her a good 5-star weapon and you give her some good artifacts, her damage as a sub DPS is honestly quite impressive, and she definitely does make some very solid contributions to the team. It's part of why Double Hydro works so well. If you stick Yelan with our dearest Hydro Archon, well then you're going to be experiencing some nice damage numbers, because those two tend to carry most teams they're in whenever they play together. Whoever is at the helm is a driver more often than not, and those two are the passengers in the back, enjoying a nice drink or something. On cheaper builds, she's still going to do a considerable amount of sub DPS. It's not going to be as impressive as a more well-invested Yelan, but it's definitely still going to be there. I should also mention that she has a little bit of buffing in her kit. I will say it's nothing that impressive these days, because we've gotten so many crazy different types of buffs now, and I would say it was a bigger deal whenever she first came out, but even so, it's still worth mentioning because it's a nice pro of hers. Essentially, whoever the on-field character is going to get a ramping damage bonus percent buff over time whenever she has her burst up. So we're slowly going to get more damage bonus percent until the backloaded buff eventually completes itself. Yes, it is a backloaded buff, and it does need some time to complete, but it's still a nice bonus nevertheless. It's definitely not as strong these days because we just have so many crazy different types of buffs, and it is likely that this is going to weaken in Not Cry, because lunar reactions basically have nothing to do with traditional damage bonus percent. I wouldn't let this necessarily be your make or break as to whether you want to pull Yelan or not. It's definitely a nice quality of hers, but it's nothing major. But it is still, either way, a nice thing that you can consider. I should also mention that if you care to, and if you have an Elegy of the End, you can also stick that on her if you want to further improve her buffing capabilities. If you would rather see her do more supportive things, as opposed to see her do more damage. That's also a completely viable way to play her. Alas, as well as this spy lady has aged, we do still need to discuss her flaws. One of them being that I do feel like she's fading in relevancy. First of all, I would say her main claim to fame at the minute is double hydro. Outside of that, we have so many other options for teams now and so many different types of teams now, but I don't think that being a replacement for Lady Farina is as much of a commendable quality as it might have been a couple months back, or even a year back or so. I would say that she's still decent and definitely still strong, but I wouldn't really say that there's as strong of an incentive to pull her. She generally just ends up being a good hydro alternative in most situations, and while she is definitely strong and definitely is going to give you value, I do feel like her time is going to be coming to an end soon. The moment we get another good 5-star hydro support, I feel like she's going to be replaced in double hydro, and then there's just not really going to be a reason to get her anymore. Now granted, Hoyoverse hasn't chronicled her for a reason, because she is still pretty good, and there is still an understandable reason to pull her these days, and she can definitely still do a lot for your account. And if you're somebody that's just starting out Genshin, and you don't have any 5-star hydros, characters in this game take months at a time to return, and picking up Yelan now would honestly not be a bad investment, because she's definitely going to sort you out for the time being, and you're definitely going to get your use out of her while you do wait for Lady Farina to come back. And even then, if you don't have that large of a roster, you can definitely make use of her with Farina. Plus, those more niche supports that end up replacing Hydro, such as Sitlolly, those only work for a specific genre of characters, such as Pyro DPSs. But either way, the replacements do exist, and you never really see Yelan in top tier teams anymore. 9 times out of 10, when you're seeing Yelan, it's because Lady Farina wasn't available, and that in of itself is a quality, yes. Being able to substitute for such a strong meta character that basically everyone has is relevant. However, as we get more and more teams that don't necessarily require Farina, or the bestest off for that team isn't Farina, I'm not exactly sure how much longer Yelan is going to have that quality for. The character has been a good unit for years at this point, and if she continues to be good, then I definitely welcome that. That would be very nice. But I'm not expecting it, nor am I counting on it. It will be awesome, but I'm not counting on it. I do think her relevancy these days is starting to fade, and I do think that this is probably the last banner where I would say that picking her up would be a good decision. I feel like beyond this point, there's just other characters to focus on. Yes, if you really need a 5-star Hydro, she is worth your time, because if you don't have a 5-star Hydro, not only is she going to completely fulfill your needs in that regard, but she's still good at that job. That's the thing. Yelan isn't even that bad, it's just we have better now, and as time goes on, we are getting more and more teams that don't even need that better. I will say if you're a newer player, you're going to enjoy her running around the place. It is excellent. However, we have so many good exploration characters these days, to the point where I can't really just say that Yelan is the only one that's able to do what she does. Granted, if you do have her C1, that does make her even better for exploration, but either way, I just don't think that her relevancy is going to remain. It's unpredictable, but I just do think that nowadays she is not as much of a good pull as before. She's not chronicled for a reason, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was on the next Leeway Chronicled. Next up, I should mention how she's not always proccable. What I mean by this is that there's certain units that just aren't able to use her because they don't do traditional normal attacks or they're not able to proc her burst. The main value of Yelan is her burst. If a character is unable to utilize that effectively, then it is basically wasted. Because then, you either have to weave normal attacks into your rotation, or you basically do nothing and just use it for the ramping damage bonus %. Which, yes, I suppose that's a use case, but you're missing out on so much of Yelan's value. That being her personal damage and Hydro Application, 2 of the biggest core reasons as to why you would even use the character in a team in the first place. So, I would say that this phenomenon, it's common enough among enough characters. However, I would say there are still plenty as much characters that can proc her, so don't worry about it too much. Just don't necessarily expect anything out of a Chaska or Novelette. They are not going to be proccing a singular proc of that burst unless you go out of your way to. However, I should say that Yelan is still a good unit at the end of the day. Still definitely a reasonable pull, I just don't think she's as needed as before, and besides, I'd say after Farina released, she never really was needed again, but she was still a nice pull, and I think it's pretty much the same situation now. If you feel like you need another Hydro 5-star, which is understandable because of how good the element is, then it's not necessarily going to be a bad investment. I would say just wait for the next 5-star Hydro support at this point. I feel like they're probably going to just knock Yelan out of the meta entirely, but we'll just have to wait and see whenever that happens. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Yelan's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and good luck rolling the dice on her in about 2 weeks.